NPR's Cokie Roberts. Good morning, Cokie.
Good morning, Linda. You there?
Yeah. So for people who are actually trying to take a nice weekend off today here, what did the president say that's got people excited?
On Friday night at the White House of the dinner breaking the Ramadan fast, the president made a very strong statement about the right of religious freedom in this country, the right to practice and to build on private land as long as you're complying with the local rules and regulations. Well, that started a firestorm, and by Saturday, when he was on the Gulf Coast, he said, well, I didn't say that it was wise to build the mosque. I didn't say they should build the mosque. I just said that they had the right to do it, which is simply a statement of fact. So, you know, he's sort of said both things now and gotten both sides upset. The problem for the president is more than 60% of the people in the polls say that the mosque should not be built, but equally 60% say they have the people have a right to do it.
So what are the Republicans saying? Can they really make hay out of this?
Well, they think they can. They're not trying to make hay out of the issue itself. What they're trying to do is to portray the president and all of the quote-unquote Washington elites as out of touch with the American people. Here's Senator John Cornyn, the head of the Republican Campaign Committee, talking on Fox News Sunday.
To me, it demonstrates that that Washington, the White House, the administration, the president himself, seems to be disconnected from the mainstream of America, and I think that's one of the reasons people are so frustrated.
Republicans say the Democrats are ignoring the American people on this issue, on health care, on immigration, on taxes, and asking basically, is this the change you voted for?
Now, the Democrats obviously have plenty of warning that they are in trouble, that the midterm elections could go badly for them. Do they have room to turn that around between now and the election?
Well, they're looking for themes, and so far not coming up with much. They do have lots of money, and of course that is a big help. But they're really returning to tried and true themes, running against George Bush. And this weekend, the president, on the anniversary of Social Security, warned against Republicans trying to privatize Social Security. And that's, of course, one of the reasons, though, that the Democrats are so upset about this distraction over the mosque, because they thought the president was on a roll there.
Republicans are expressing some concerns about their candidates, people who are winning primaries. Tea Party-backed Republican nominees, is that going to help the Democrats?
Well, it certainly could, particularly in some states. In Nevada, for instance, where Harry Reid was thought to be a dead man walking, his campaign has been revived. And these far-right, in many cases, Republican candidates certainly can turn off independent voters. Now, the question is, do those independents then stay home, or do they vote Democratic? Off-year elections, as you well know, Linda, tend to be about getting out the base, and the base of the Republican Party is excited. The base of the Democratic Party, not so much, particularly over issues like the continuing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
NPR News analyst Cokie Roberts. Cokie, thank you.
Let's talk about one of those continuing wars. The last American commander in Afghanistan lost his job over remarks made in the press. So it may be no accident that the new commander is famous for his careful management of the press. General David Petraeus has begun a round of media interviews. He turned up yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press. NPR Pentagon correspondent Tom Bowman was listening. He's with us live. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
What did you learn?
Well, not too much, really. Again, General Petraeus carefully manages the press, and this is perfectly choreographed here, this appearance on NBC. And throughout the week, Petraeus will hit all the major TV networks. And he's carrying sort of a steady theme. That, first of all, there is some success in Afghanistan with improved security in parts of Helmand province in the south. They've also started creating what are in essence armed community watch groups in some villages. But he's also saying that this is going to take a long time. There are significant challenges still with security in parts of the country, with corruption in the Karzai government, lack of basic government services for the Afghan people. And he's also has said and will say that this administration has finally resourced this adequately, that there are enough soldiers and civilians to start getting the job done.
Well, one question people have is, when you look at all those problems, whether Petraeus thinks he has a way to win this war, or if he just wants to get out.
Well, it seems like he believes they can have success, and he's very careful about using the term winning or win. I think what they're trying to do is stabilize this government, increase the size of the Afghan security forces. They're not going to try to turn them to a Marine Corps, certainly, but adequate enough to be able to fight the Taliban on their own. So I don't think he's going to cut and run, and frankly, I think what he's saying is it's going to take a lot longer than people think. Now, the president has said he would like to start removing troops by July 2011. Now, administration officials from Vice President Biden to Defense Secretary Gates are backing off on that, saying don't expect too many to be cut. And Petraeus himself talked about this a bit yesterday. Let's listen to what he said.
This is a date when a process begins that is conditions-based. And as the conditions permit, we transition tasks to our Afghan counterparts in the security forces and in various governmental institutions. And that enables a, quote, responsible drawdown of our forces.
So that's very carefully placed words there. Conditions-based, what in essence means you need better security, better government before you can leave parts of the country. So he's sending the message, don't expect huge numbers to come out by next July. And in fact, one general told me, who had some experience in Afghanistan, I asked him, when do you think large numbers of troops can start coming home? And without a beat, he answered 2014.
Although if you're going to keep large numbers of troops in Afghanistan, you need to maintain political support. What's the next point at which Petraeus has to demonstrate some progress?
Well, in December, he's going to have a review, and people I talk with say he's going to have to show some signs of improvement, and that comes, I think, partly with the military operations you're seeing in the south now, particularly around the city of Kandahar. And I was there back in June and July, and it's pretty bad north of the city in the Arghandab River Valley. It's really like Dodge City almost. Taliban are shooting up the real estate. So I think there's a lot of pressure, particularly in the Arghandab Valley north of Kandahar, to show some progress by year's end.
Tom, let's listen to what Petraeus said when he was asked if the United States is lowering its goals somewhat in Afghanistan.
At the end of the day, it's not about their embrace of us. It's not about us winning hearts and minds. It's about the Afghan government winning hearts and minds. This isn't to say that there's any kind of objective of turning Afghanistan into Switzerland in 3 to 5 years or less. Afghan good enough is good enough.
Okay, Afghan good enough is good enough. Is that goal a good enough goal?
Well, I think certainly for the administration, they say just trying to get this place stable, trying to create enough Afghan security forces is good enough. The previous administration, I think, tried to turn this into a shining example of democracy. You're not hearing that now.
Tom, thanks very much as always.
You're welcome, Steve.
That's NPR's Pentagon correspondent Tom Bowman bringing us up to date on the first of what may be several television appearances by General David Petraeus, the new American commander in Afghanistan. You're listening.
We're funded by you, our listeners, and by IBM, working to help mid-sized businesses become the engines of a smarter planet. Learn more at ibm.com/engines. Vanguard, a client-owned company where the clients own the funds and the funds own the company. Learn more at vanguard.com. And Subaru, where all vehicles are built in zero landfill plants. Love, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. From Boston University, this is WBUR, Boston's NPR news station. Coming up on Morning Edition, our series on human evolution continues. Today, we look at human language. Also this hour, the latest on the apparent suicide of the so-called Craigslist killer who was found dead in his cell at the Suffolk County Jail yesterday. In business news, Japan has lost its place as the world's second largest economy. A Japanese drop in growth for this year's second quarter saw China surge ahead and take the number 2 slot. Japan's economy grew just 0.4% for the spring, its slowest rate in 3 years and far below the expected 2.5% growth. China has not released second quarter numbers, but economists expect growth
of about 9%. Our forecast says clouds, showers today, temperatures in the 80s. Thunderstorms possible tonight with lows in the 60s. Tomorrow will be mostly sunny, highs in the 80s, and sunshine on Wednesday with temperatures in the 80s. WBUR supporters include Get in Shape for Women. Their body transformation program includes weight and cardio training, nutrition, and accountability. 37 studios. GetInShapeForWomen.com.
The words you're hearing right now are really just arbitrary sounds. Yet, after a little decoding by your brain, these sounds make sense, which is because humans have evolved a brain with an extraordinary knack for language. In our series, The Human Edge, NPR is looking at evolutionary changes that helped us become the Earth's dominant species. And today, NPR's John Hamilton explores the power of language and the uncertainty about where it comes from.
Ask Jeff Ellman why language is such a big deal, and you get a simple answer.
Because it's changed the face of the Earth. And the Earth would not be the way it is if humankind didn't have the ability to communicate, to organize itself, to pass knowledge down from generation to generation. We'd be living in troops of very smart baboons.
Ellman, a cognitive scientist at the University of California, San Diego, says language lets us cooperate in groups of millions instead of dozens. It also lets us share the complex ideas produced by our brains. And it's flexible in ways you don't find in the communication systems of other species. Take bees. Ellman says they have a remarkable ability to communicate precisely where to find pollen.
It's a very elaborate system. It works very well. But that's all it does. So they can't talk about politics. They can't talk about, who's having an affair with what other bee. And these are things that we can do.
There's no single language module in our brain. Instead, language seems to come from lots of different circuits. And many of those circuits also exist in other species. Some birds can imitate human speech. Some monkeys use specific calls to tell one another whether a predator is a leopard, a snake, or an eagle. And Ellman says dogs read our gestures and tone of voice.
You could take a little bit from a dog, a little bit from a monkey, a little bit from a parrot, and half a dozen other species, and you put it together. And what you get is exactly the right ingredients for, making language possible.
What's unclear is how and when language first appeared. David Armstrong spent decades pondering that question at Gallaudet University. He says the problem is that unlike physical changes, mental ones don't leave behind any fossils.
We have no way of knowing exactly when or how people began to speak, or in the case of sign language, when they began to sign or to gesture in a way that was complex enough for us to consider it to have been language.
Language means not having just a label for, say, an axe, but being able to convey an idea, like the axe works better if you hold it this way. And there are several competing hypotheses about how